Hey everyone, it's Dr. Z. This is AP Euro on the Enlightenment, and this is part 3. We're going to start with a Scottish philosopher named David Hume. His book, An Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding, is notable for its connection to skepticism. So this is an old ancient Greek idea, and Hume talked about how he thought no truth exists. Humans base their knowledge on sensory perception, and everybody's perception is different. So there's no certainty in the universe. And he then takes that idea and expands it forward and says, well, since there are no truths in the universe, then the truths of Christianity also could have no basis. A famous quote is that religion grows out of hope and fear. So again, we see another philosopher, right, looking at religion and separating it from God. He said, reason cannot provide morality. Morals come from emotions and desires, like approval and shame. And therefore, he undermined Enlightenment's faith in reason, right? So he takes it a step further, in overturning reason itself along with the truth of religion. Because how could humans be reasonable if we all perceive things, see things, hear things, experience and feel things differently? Another famous philosopher at this time was an economist, really, Adam Smith, also Scottish, like Hume. He has a book called The Wealth of Nations, attacking laws and regulations created by mercantilist governments that prevented commerce from thriving. So what he wanted was governments to basically let go of control over the market, and he wants free market economics. That's called laissez-faire, right? Laissez-faire simply means let it be or let it do, meaning that the government should not interfere with markets. And we have basically laissez-faire economics today. Another Enlightenment thinker comes out of Italy, a man named Cesare Beccaria. He really, you can think of him as sort of a founding father of criminal and legal reform. He thought laws should promote happiness, that they should be fair to criminals and victims, that punishments should deter the crime. He thought that torture was a terrible practice, that capital punishment was a bad practice. He thought that criminals could be rehabilitated in a better prison system than what was existing at the time. This leads to the development of the penitentiary system a little bit later in European history. He also believed people were innocent until proven guilty. And a lot of his ideas show up in the Napoleonic Code. So he writes here, this is his tombstone, as a quote by him. So it says, if I demonstrate that the death penalty is neither useful nor necessary, I will have won the cause of humanity. Right? And we're still having debates about these things today. Immanuel Kant, who you learned about in your documents, wrote What is the Enlightenment? His idea is sapere aude, dare to know. Think freely. And I gave you these two images here because sapere aude shows up on tattoos and on posters and a bunch of different places. And so we see here there's a bookshop with that name. His idea was that, reason has limitations, much like Hume believed, right? So no one could really know if there's a God or an afterlife, but then again, no one could really know that there wasn't one either. Another big concept in the Enlightenment is the idea of enlightened absolutists, and you heard me mention these in another video. So here are the four that the AP gods want you to understand the most about. Frederick the Great in Prussia is the first one. We can call him the conflicted monarch. So humane policies for his subjects. He thought that would strengthen the state. He believed in religious freedom and tolerance, but not for the Jews. He built and improved Prussian schools. He permitted scholars to publish. He tried to simplify laws. He abolished the torture of prisoners. So he's listening to people like Beccaria. He created an effective state bureaucracy, and he condemned the practice of serfdom, but he never freed serfs on his own estates. Right? So that's like speaking out against slavery, but then still owning slaves. So he's conflicted. He believes in religious tolerance, but only for Christians. He's not, not fully embracing these Enlightenment ideas, but he's moving in that direction. And as we mentioned, he did talk to Voltaire. Catherine the Great in Russia is another enlightened absolutist. She helped publish the encyclopedia. She corresponded with Voltaire. Like Peter the Great before her, she imported Western architects and sculptors and musicians and intellectuals to the court. She tried, but didn't quite succeed in writing a new code of law. She did restrict torture, improved education, strengthened local governments, and allowed limited religious toleration. She condemned serfdom in theory, but then there was a peasant rebellion, and she gave up on this idea of reform because she came to see serfs as a dangerous class and gave nobles absolute control over their serfs. She did free the nobles from their taxes and their state service, and serfdom under her rule became an incredibly repressive practice in Russia. She also undertook the Polish partitions at the end of the 18th century that divided Poland between Austria-Hungary and Prussia and Russia. So territorial expansion and empire building were seen as essential to the development of the strong state of Russia under her. The Austrian monarchs are Empress Maria Theresa and her son, Joseph II. So Maria Theresa limits the papacy's political influence. She institutes reforms to strengthen bureaucracy, reforms the tax system, taxes nobles, right? So she's going in a different direction than Catherine the Great for sure. She reduced the powers of the lords over their serfs and partially freed some of the peasants, hoping to increase agricultural production in doing so. But then Joseph II comes into power. He's her son. He maintains the controls of the church. He granted religious tolerance and civic rights to Protestants and Jews, and then he abolishes serfdom in 1781. In 1789, he decreed that all peasant labor obligations would be converted to cash payments, and this ended up actually being unpopular for both peasants and landowners. And then when he prematurely died at age 49, his brother Leopold II canceled all of these radical edicts under Joseph and reestablished order in the Austrian regime. So peasants were once again required to do forced labor in Austria-Hungary under Leopold. Lastly, I just want to present you a thesis by one writer, Larry Wolff, in his book, The Invention of Eastern Europe. As you might notice in this idea of enlightened absolutism, we have most of the philosophes, right, in France and Great Britain and in parts in Italy as well, corresponding with these enlightened absolutists in Eastern Europe. France very much is the center of the Enlightenment. Larry Wolff says that during the Renaissance, the center of culture was here in Italy, right? And that there was a north-south divide, right? That the north was seen as not as cultured, but the south was very cultured. And he says that during the Enlightenment, the center of culture flips to the west, to France, right? And makes everything on the western side look more civilized and advanced, right? As opposed to the lack of civilization, right? The practice of serfdom and whatnot in the East. And that this creates a divide, right, between Eastern Europe and Western Europe. He says that the Iron Curtain actually fell in the 1700s, not in the 1900s. So I'll leave you with that. I think it's a fascinating idea, and his thesis is one that has stayed with me even since graduate school. Okay, take care. That is the end of the Enlightenment for us.